Hi, Chris McClure here with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Welcome to this episode of our podcast. Today I'm going to be talking about lawsuits. Lawsuits. Everywhere there are lawsuits, it seems right now. We've had some in New England. We've had one in the Midwest now. And now we just heard about a large department filing one on the West Coast. These are lawsuits aimed at fire apparatus manufacturers, the same ones that we have all heard mentioned during what is a little bit over a year. It was about a little over a year ago, that I did a commentary podcast called "Go Birds" and "Connecting Dots That Might Not Be There." The "Go Birds" part, obviously, it was a Super Bowl Sunday when I recorded it. I was certainly after that night, I was certainly celebrating as the Eagles won the Super Bowl in 2025. But the dots that might not be there were referring to an article that had run in the New York Times and a video that was making the rounds by an antitrust lawyer alleging that there were some connections between long lead times and a fairly catastrophic incident. And I was skeptical that those dots could be connected. And that was sort of my cautionary tale back there. Be careful about connecting dots that may not be there. There were some, there are some pretty serious allegations that this person was making. It's certainly, looking back, I can't tell you how many people came up to me at FDIC and said, "What do you think about what's going on?" And they didn't have to tell me what they meant by what's going on. I knew what they were talking about, and it was pretty much the same answer. It's like I'm not sure. We'll see how it shakes out, but I really am unable to make the connection that lawyer was trying to make. Over time, we had a few months in between FDIC and September where there was a congressional hearing held on it. I was very disappointed with the congressional hearing. It certainly did not offer to me any more information than I already had on what the situation was. It seemed to me that some of the people invited to participate in that hearing were not really given a great opportunity to answer some of the questions. And if you're just going to constantly interrupt the people, like why bother having them there? You could write a position paper instead if all you want to do is get your thoughts out there. So it was disappointing in those two respects. I did get myself into a little bit of trouble after that because a big part of those Senate hearings centered around firefighter safety, and again, two dots that weren't necessarily able to be connected. That maybe and I believed that, look, if this is about if you're an antitrust lawyer and you've got these theories on this and that's what you want it to be about, then stick to it. But it seemed to me that maybe that wasn't getting the type of traction he wanted. So he decided to try to make it more about, to try to connect other dots. The first set of dots didn't work. So now we're going to try to connect these dots. And there were five people on the panel, and they were interrogated by the committee. It was a disappointing thing, and like I said, I got into a little bit of trouble because I kind of looked at it like, hey, this is your argument, leave me out of it. As a firefighter, I was like, leave me out of it. Didn't go over great, but that was that was how I certainly felt at the time, and to an extent I still think that stick to your guns. If this is what you want it to be about, don't change gears because you think like maybe it's not going the way you planned. So that was that. Along the way, there have been some lawsuits filed during the past year. And We just heard about another one just yesterday about a large city on the West Coast, a large county on the West Coast, filing one. I think you might think to yourself, well, there's enough lawsuits now. There must be something to it. And what these lawsuits are alleging is in I think just about every one of them that I've seen is talking about collusion of some sort among these manufacturers that I'm not gonna there's no need to mention them. Everybody knows who I'm talking about. So the manufacturers that they keep bringing up, they have talked about them working together to create the environment that we're in right now. I can't imagine that there is a company that manufactures a product that is not always looking for ways to increase the throughput of that factory. I don't think any company is happy telling a customer that it will be 3 years before we can get your order to you. That's me. You may disagree with me, and that's fine. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I have a hard time believing that 3 companies got together and said, let's see how we can make these lead times so untenable that that we have lawsuits filed against us. Let's make life difficult for our end users. I just can't logically, in my mind, that just doesn't make sense to me. It also does not make sense to me that 3 companies vying for market share are going to get together to do something like that. It just doesn't make sense. And I think that if you look at those 3 companies, you can see what they are all doing to increase their capacity to try to combat what has become an industry-wide problem or issue, industry-wide condition, let's say. Because it's not like you can say, well, those 3 companies are experiencing these lead times. I'm going to go to a different one. They're all experiencing the lead time issues. Those are 3 companies. There are, if you look at famous roles, upwards of 50 manufacturers out there. Not all of them are custom rigs, but there are apparatus more than 3. Let's just put it that way, or 3 companies. I'm also with these lawsuits. Now, you might be tempted to say, well, there must be something there if there's all these lawsuits. I'm not here to say that there's not. But I don't necessarily join in with what they're alleging, as I just said. I'm also unclear on what the outcome is that they're looking for. Now, I've read news reports on these. I have not read the lawsuits themselves. However, I am curious, really about what it is they are looking to achieve here, like what that end game is. A year ago, with the fellow who did this video and which kind of got everything moving here. A year ago, I was saying I don't know what his end game is, and I still don't know what the end game is for all this stuff. Things seem to have been calming down. There's a lot of noise again about these lawsuits. I really just I'm unclear on what they're looking for, and I look at it and I go, okay, if company A gets punished tomorrow, there's a ruling on one of these suits, they get punished. What does that do for me, Chris McClune, member of Weldon Fire Company? We're getting ready. I've said it. I think I've said it on commentaries. I've certainly said it in the magazine and editorials. I say we. There is an apparatus committee appointed at Weldon Fire Company to start the process of replacing the rescue truck that the fire company owns. That that apparatus committee is meeting to get an idea of the type of vehicle that they want, the type of equipment they want to put on it, the main purpose of that truck. They are looking at probably a 5-year process, probably 1 or 2 to get all the ducks in a row, and then probably a 3-year build time, based on current conditions. We'd love, I say we, the fire company would love to get a truck sooner. However, it's going to be a little bit before that committee is even ready to bring the recommendation to the rest of the company at a business meeting to get permission to spend what it will cost to replace the vehicle. I certainly would love it. I'm not getting any younger, so I would love it for that to be here sooner. It's always great to welcome a new rig into the firehouse. But if something happens today, is that going to get me that rig faster? I really don't think it will. I just wonder, like, what is the end game? What is that big picture? What are you trying to achieve by doing this? Are you just trying to make a point? What change are you trying to affect with the lawsuits? The lead times are the lead times. And if something were to come down tomorrow from a judge, it's not really going to change those lead times, because there are trucks that are in process, unless you're going to now, give all these companies a gajillion dollars to expand their their production lines. It is right now what it is. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with this is, everybody's going to have their own opinion. I've seen it socially on social media. I've seen it down at my own firehouse. It's interesting to me that, some of the guys who I run with, they run a business themselves. They're kind of looking at this like something just doesn't line up. So I'm not suggesting that anybody put aside what they believe. If you believe there's an issue, then I would fight to get that resolved. But I wouldn't just necessarily jump on board any of these without really doing your homework. How do you spec a truck? You do your homework up front so that when you go to the pre-construction meeting, you've got things pretty much squared away with what you want, how you want it to be. So by the time you get to engineering, it's golden. Do that now before you get into any of these. It's very easy to be annoyed that your truck is delayed. I'm gonna join up with we're gonna join that lawsuit. It's very tempting, but look at that big picture. That's something that I always come back to, the big picture of what's happening. Really look at the big picture. Look at the potential results of what could happen depending on the results of these. Take a look at it and go, is that really going a victory there? Is that going to help me? You have to look at it, and you have to figure that out for yourself and for the good of your department or fire company. Again, I mean, there are still some dots here that just don't make sense. That just don't connect. And so, I would suggest that you take a look at those dots. If you can connect them without really having to come up with some weird rationalizations, then hey, more power to you. I don't decry that at all. But if you can't, then really think about it. People are still ordering trucks. If you need a new fire truck, you're going to order a new fire truck. And right now, you're going to have to work with the lead times that are there. If you're going to do a custom rig, there are alternatives. There are other manufacturers that you can look at. There are other programs. There are stock programs. Just about every I think just about every manufacturer out there has some sort of stock program. You don't necessarily, keeping in mind the big picture. What is that big picture? We just interviewed 3 chiefs whose departments went through a stock program. The one chief mentioned that he was using the stock rigs in his case to bridge the gap. They needed to get replacement vehicles. They needed to put these other vehicles into reserve. They took the steps that they did. Big picture. Their big picture is, we're still going to get custom rigs, but right now we're in need, and this was the best thing for our department. And really, isn't that what we're all trying to do? We're all trying to build the best trucks for our departments. We're all trying to build the best trucks for our customers, the public. Again, I logically, a lot of these allegations just don't make sense to me. I don't pretend to be a Wharton Business School graduate, so maybe I'm naive in that respect. But a lot of what's being said just doesn't make sense. I've been to enough manufacturers to know that the people that are building these vehicles consider themselves, and I've said it before, they consider themselves to be part of the life-saving process. They know they can't have a bad day, just like we know we can't have a bad day on the job. They take a tremendous amount of pride in being part of the fire service and being part of the life-saving process. And again, I just cannot imagine, it just doesn't make sense in my head that a company would intentionally make things difficult for its customers, let alone 3 of them getting together to collectively make things difficult for customers. It just doesn't make sense in my mind. So that's kind of it. Might get in trouble again. Got myself in the hot water about 6 or 7 months ago. This might get me into some hot water again. But all I can do is tell you what's on my mind. And what's on my mind is, there are still just too many dots that don't connect. And, just because there are this many lawsuits and this many departments possibly joining in doesn't necessarily mean that there's something there. And again, treat this like you would spec'ing a rig, spec'ing PPE, spec'ing SCBA. Do your homework and figure out, take a look at that end game, take a look at what they're looking to achieve at the end, and say to yourself, is this going to help me get my truck right now any faster? And I think the answer is probably going to be no. But again, that's kind of my take on it. So again, this has been Chris McClune with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. If you want to comment on anything that I've said, let me know. chris.mcclune@clarionevents.com. If you are interested in our previous podcasts that we've done, whether commentaries or moving water, talking trucks, they are all archived at www.fireapparatus.com/podcast. So again, this has been Chris McClune with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Have a good one, everyone, and stay safe.